when Boris Johnson was running for a general election in 2019, he ran on two pillars. Of course, the first one was to get Brexit done and unleash the power of global Britain and how fantastic that all would be. And, well, Brexit, as we've said, is never, ever going to be done. It is just going to be a considering roller coaster of continuous ups and downs until we finally go, okay, Brexit was just completely ridiculous. Let's just, rejoin. Come on, guys. We've learned the lesson by now. So eventually that is it. And everything seems to be pointing in that general direction. Even when you've got, Labour going, look, we're going to go and do alignment deals. You can very clearly see that the UK, given all the geopolitical stuff that's going on at the moment, being, shall we say, pushed ever more closer to Europe. The idea that it was going to be this freebooting, buccaneering nation, well, it was just a vivid fantasy of the Brexiteers. And of course, the other core pillar of the Conservative Manifesto 2019 was levelling up. The idea that now we are going to come in and we are going to remember all these forgotten places. If you were a forgotten town, well, no, don't worry. We're going to come in and help you. And that is what won a lot of these red wall seats. But as we have talked about time and time again, people in these red wall seats are continuously seeing, well, there's no progress being made. They're not doing anything. This leveling up fund and money, if they get it, doesn't seem to be actually having any impact or working properly, because we've said very well from the very beginning, it was never designed to do so, because they don't really generally care about what the money, an amount of money they would need to invest to level up properly. So it should come as no surprise that today there's been a report that has found out, shock horror, less than 20%, yes, less than 20% of leveling up projects have been completed. Should we be shocked by this? Absolutely not. This was the way it was always going to go. The entire leveling up program and systems, even though, as we once said, shockingly, the first two chapters of the leveling up white report paper that was released by this Tory government got everything spot on, said everything it needed that the North needed, that these leveling up places it needed to do. And then you get to the Treasury part. And who was in charge of the Treasury? Rishi Sunak, who just slashed everything. All the budgets, all the money gone. And instead of really investing in these places and properly giving them what they needed, instead it was just a tiny drop in the bucket of what was really needed. So remember that going to the polls this year. I think a lot of people in the red wall, oh boy, are they going to remember? So, of course, as always, before we do get talking about this new report, please do remember to click on the like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, the monetization link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can all buy me coffee. There's the YouTube thank you button. And of course, there's the Pony Club down below as well. So, let's crack on into this. This comes from The Guardian with the title of Less than 20% of levelling up projects completed in England, figures show. So less than a fifth of the projects approved by Michael Gove to improve towns and cities across England have been completed. The government has now admitted in the latest sign of the problems it is facing in its levelling up agenda. Why is it facing the problems? Because it's not putting the funding in. You need some serious and sustained funding. And I know I've got many German followers, subscribers, and watchers. What has happened when Eastern Germany sort of reconnected? They realized very quickly that East Germany needed a ton of investment in it that is still going on today. And yeah, have there been failures and successes in that program? Absolutely. My German viewers will, whenever they've brought this up, will argue till the sun goes down about the success or not success of these projects. But It needs a long sustained period to be able to do this. And the Germans have at least taken that conversation of leveling up properly and seriously, where our government hasn't even bothered. So even though there might be failures and successes in the German program of their version of leveling up, at least your government has actually put some effort in. At least it's actually tried. Anyway, the response, of course, from Gove's department to the Freedom of Information requests show that the fewer than 20% projects sanctioned under the 3.6 billion towns fund were on track to be finished by the end of February. But fewer than half will have actually been completed by the next election, even if it is held in November, the figures show. The data is just the latest set of example of how difficult the Conservatives have found to meet its promises the party made in the last election to use its post-Brexit freedoms to reduce regional inequality in England. And here's the thing, you did not need Brexit to address regional inequality in England. If anything, Brexit is now making the regional inequality a whole lot worse. Anyway, The Guardian revealed that last year that the councils were now having to scale back or freeze levelling up projects because of the soaring costs, and Gove's department was handing back nearly £2 billion of housing money after struggling to find projects to spend it on. Jack Shaw, a local government expert who uncovered the figures, said, given that this was a flagship policy priority at the last general election, the expectations on the government to deliver this new infrastructure in places that have historically been ignored were high. Inflation and interest rates have prevented some projects from making progress, but the government also failed to respond to those changes and has instead asked places to reduce their ambition. Come the election, the current evidence suggests the government will have failed in its pledge to level up communities. And it's not just things like the leveling up. Well, it's like abandoning HS2. Why on earth would you abandon HS2? Because, yes, you are getting that London to Birmingham line, but as many people had pointed out continuously, that part of the line was not where you were going to get the improvements. It's where you went north of Birmingham up to Manchester, potentially with the other leg going out off up to into Sheffield. Those were all where the big benefits of this were going to be. But they have just limited their ambition. They got scared that, oh no, the project of this cost are going to balloon. Well, yeah, we've seen that from almost every single high-speed rail ever built, right from Japan's Shinkansen, right even through to the recently just finished Spain high-speed rail that they've been building. But why do you build this? You build it because it improves the capacity of your rail network. It improves the rail network as a whole in your country, and it pays for itself and adds billions to your economy. But they haven't done that because the short-term ambitions or the short-termism in the Conservative Party is what rules and makes decisions. Well, all those benefits of HS2 are like 10, 20, 30 years away. So we're just going to get rid of it now because, it's too expensive. And now we've been left, as a lot of rail experts have said, if we don't do something about this properly and get HS2 back on track, you're going to be left with decades worth of just poor rail infrastructure, to a point where the rail companies are going to have to raise fares to make sure that people don't use the train, which is not how you want public transport infrastructure to work. Oh, anyway, back to this. The Towns Fund was almost announced immediately after last election, with Gove promising it would give the uninvested towns the much needed funding and support it was going to get to give their long-term plans. The funding was a key plank in the levelling up to improve the infrastructure outside of London and major cities. Projects included the new investment zone around Blackpool Airport, the industrial centre in Grimsby, and the regeneration of Bradford's train station. Well, we all know what Boris did to that. But since then, however, high inflation has eaten into large parts of Gove's budget and made it increasingly difficult to complete building projects. The Guardian reported last year that at least £500 million had been lost from the levelling up projects because of rising costs, with leisure buildings, high streets, museums, and public spaces all being hit. Many councils have now stated or even reduced their plans as a result of these higher costs, and some say they will now have to find it a very lengthy and bureaucratic process to get Whitehall officials to approve their alternatives to their original plans. A report by Thurrock Council last November showed the authority struggling with the pressures of higher inflation. The council was due to spend at least £22.8 million on improving the Tilbury town centre, improving a new community hub, youth centre, new cycle paths, and a new jetty. But in November, local officials warned there had to be significant costs of price inflation, since the plans were submitted, forcing them to review the entire scheme to make sure the council did not overspend. The report added, there has been a significant delay in the confirmation of the business cases due to the need of further reassurance and assessment on work by the governments, by the Levelling Up Department, and the commissioners. The figures unearthed by Shaw do show that out of the 973 town fund projects, only 154 are due to be completed by the end of February. And by the end of November, that figure will rise to just 385, just 40% of the total. So right now, there's 20%. By November, that goes up to 40%. Leveling up at this point, I think we can successfully say, meaning that this was meant to be a big flagship priority policy promise from the Conservatives as well, has really failed. it's just absolutely failed on this. And the big problem is this Labour quote down here, because this spells it out why this was such a bad way to do all this. So Justin Manners, the shadowing Level Up secretary, said the Tories' begging bowl approach to levelling up has forced leaders to spend time, effort, and taxpayers' money bidding for uncertainty and tightly ring-fenced posts of money. This sticking plaster approach will not give the local leaders the tools that they need to drive growth in the local area and live up to their best potential. And that was the big problem, that it was councils competing for money that they needed, where they shouldn't have had to be in that. We've heard stories about councils having to spend extra money to just apply for this levelling up process and then not get the levelling up funds, which now means they've spent all this extra money to apply for money and then not get it. And as a lot of people have been pointing out, we will be very interested to see if this research goes further to see actually which councils profited most from these levelling up funds. Because it would not shock me in the slightest to see that maybe all these new Red Wall MPs were suddenly, shall we say, top of the barrel, getting these new appointments, or maybe even not in some cases. It wouldn't shock me either for that to be the case. But I'm sure we'll find out in due time how true that is. But it does seem to me the way that people have talked about it, of course, the whole pork barrel politics, of course, that we've talked about before, would not shock me if that was to be the case. But yeah, we've been talking about it all this time, leveling up, going to be a failure, going to be an absolute failure. Just as the Northern Powerhouse turned into an absolute failure. That if Cameron and Osborne had actually seriously done it, would have actually brought about a lot of improvements for the North. But of course, the Tories didn't want to invest in it. They didn't want to invest in the North. They thought it was a pointless waste of time. Why are they going to invest in all these areas that aren't going to vote for them? So they never did it, even though, as it was we said at the time, you had the UK was going to do it. The EU said, that's a really good idea. We'll get behind that. other big investment sort of companies or firms went, "Oh, that's a really good idea. We'll get behind you on that." And of course, they never did it because the UK government never committed the amount of money that those other infrastructure, those other organizations and the EU, etc., wanted to see the UK government put in. And as a result, all you really got from especially the North and the leveling up was the Leeds train centre. So the Leeds train centre in Leeds city centre train station, the new exit round the back, which bear in mind, no one no one uses. No one uses it, but it's there. That was Northern Powerhouse. Northern Powerhouse built that. And that was pretty much it. There might have been like a few other extra things, but other than that, that was it. So, hey, I suppose at least Gove can say at the moment his was about like what 20% better than the Northern Powerhouse. But there you go. So, as always, thank you very much for watching, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.